And now it is time for BJ's Best.
Well, thank you, Drew, for the first time here in season 4. Well, I almost went a very different route this week for BJ's Best. And then, I saw that there was a terrible, terrible incident at Dallas Cowboys practice this afternoon. And
Oh,
I shifted gears because I didn't really want to talk about Trayvon Diggs and because the conversation I really had wanted to talk about was how good Dallas' defense had been, the Cowboys here in the start of this 2023 campaign. This is our first episode of season 4. We've been off since the season started, and the first 2 weeks look really good. And then just another, same old Cowboys. They have something inevitably that
something
goes
goes
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah. And it's not any fault of anybody's own. I mean, it just, stuff happens during the course of a season. And this is really going to be a good test to see how the Cowboys can respond because, they've still got a lot of talented pieces on their defense. Anytime you've got Micah Parsons on your team, you feel like you've got a really good chance
Oh yeah.
of being a winning team. And hopefully, if they're going to do it and this is going to be their year, which everybody has said, time and time out that it's never going to happen. But, maybe a motivation of doing this for Trayvon is what they need. But I'm not doing that. I'm not talking about the Cowboys. That was too much of a off tangent for BJ's Best. But, Drew, this weekend, next week, next weekend, and then it's the end of the regular season for Major League Baseball.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've been keeping up with it. I mean, we talked about it. You had your very famous prediction in season 3 when the Rangers got Max Scherzer in the trade.
When it started to get painful, I was just, I don't know. I haven't gotten to keep up with it like I would like, but it's been an up and down roller coaster lately, so it's been a little bit.
Most definitely it has been. There was a one point where the Rangers had lost like 8 in a row, and it's just like, well, at that point it was like, okay, well, it's football season. We're close enough to the start of NBA season while the WNBA is also going on. We've got some distractions. Thank you, Rangers, for getting us through that long period of time with nothing else besides the W to keep our minds occupied and going insane, basically. But just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in with a 6-game winning streak. Then they go on a couple losses in a row, and you're like, oh, why did I even get my hopes up? They won a couple games in a row again. And they got 7 of their final 10 games, Drew, against a team that they're currently tied with in the standings right now. They are tied at 84 and 68 with the Seattle Mariners. Both Texas and Seattle are a half game back of the Houston Astros, who are sitting at 85 and 68. So you've got not 1, not 2, but 3 potential AL West teams that are still in the chase for the division title with 10 games to go. Drew, the last time that ever happened in Major League Baseball history that you had this close to the end of the year, 3 teams still this close, neck and neck, fighting for a division championship?
30 plus years ago.
The answer would be never, Drew. It has never happened. It has never happened. We're seeing Major League Baseball history right now where you've got these teams that are so neck and neck. And one thing that I don't know if the schedule makers knew that this was going to happen, I can't imagine that they did, but the teams, Texas, Seattle tied a half game behind Houston. Well, Texas and Seattle play 3 games in Arlington this weekend. And then Seattle hosts the Astros for 3 next week. And then Seattle hosts the Rangers for 4 to close out the year. All 10 of their games are against the team that they're either tied with or a half game behind. Texas has 7 games left against the Mariners. They've got 3 against the Angels. The Astros get Kansas City this weekend, and then after their trip to Seattle, they got to go to Arizona, which is not going to be easy because you've got Arizona competing for a National League wild card spot themselves. Yeah. This is going to be crazy, Drew. Back in the day, nowadays, how they would break at a tie potentially. I went and looked. I found the tiebreaker scenarios because
Oh,
yeah, what's going to happen if you've got all three teams that have end up with the same record somehow? Don't ask me how. With 7 games between Texas and Seattle remaining, I don't know that there is a chance of that, but it is certainly possible that they could each go 5-5 in their final 10, and they'll still be tied. If for some reason the three teams end up in a three-way tie, we're going to have to go and look at who has the best record among the teams in the American League West. So right now, it's 29-13. Seattle would be the ones that would win the division because they are 29-13 against the American League West. They have the best intra-division record in the American League itself, and they have a tiebreaker over Toronto should those two teams finish tied.
I object.
Why do you object, Drew?
Because I don't want them to win.
Well, let me keep going on because if both Texas and Seattle finish in a tie, right now they've got 7 games remaining. But Drew, the Rangers are 5-1 against the Mariners here this season. All it would take is 2 more wins in their final 7. If they go 2-5 against the Mariners in the final 7 games, they would win the season series 7-6. Now, I can't imagine that losing 5 games against Seattle in the last week would keep you in the thick of it as close as you are right now. But you even if you don't go 2-5, as long as you get 2 or even more wins, preferably more, if it comes down to Texas and Seattle for a spot, Texas, because they have the head-to-head record advantage over Seattle, would find their way into the playoffs.
Ooh.
Houston has the series win over the Rangers. They were 9-4, but their record against the Mariners this year, Drew. Let me see. I've got it right here. Their record is 2-8 with 3 games remaining.
Oh my God.
So the Mariners 8-2 against the Astros this year.
That's what's weird about baseball. We own the Mariners. I feel
they own the Astros. The Astros own us. So that's why I looked and was like, okay, so if all 3 teams have the tiebreaker among the 3, how do you figure out the tie? And that's where it comes down to record in the division. So Texas needs to go on a tear here in their last 10 in order to be a playoff team for sure. And then what happens beyond that is anybody's guess. But in order to have a seat at the table, Drew, a solid finish and starting off with a couple of good wins there to win that series against Boston after a devastating, well, not devastating, but a tough loss in the first game of that series. You kind of set yourself behind the 8 ball. Every time it feels like you get some help and the Astros lose a game, the Rangers can't get it quite that time. So they could help themselves if Kansas City gives them some help over the weekend. If they beat Seattle, and they take care of business against the Angels, Seattle has a chance to help them out. Seattle has a chance to help themselves out. Texas, they still control their own destiny. Now, they do need some help, but, it's still there for a taking. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the last week plus of the Major League Baseball regular season. It's going to be exciting. I'll be there Sunday for the last regular season game between the Rangers and the Mariners in Arlington. Now, obviously, I can't make the trip up to Seattle, but the last home game of the year for Texas, and yours truly will be in attendance. So I'm excited to see if the Rangers finally get things clicking on all cylinders here in the last week plus as we go in hunting for postseason baseball in Texas, Drew.
I sure hope they do.
I do too. That's BJ's Best.
That is BJ's Best. Another wonderful edition of BJ's Best, and the first one here in season 4. Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much.